I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And I'm Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek. So we are going to talk about the entire first season of Star Trek Discovery, now that we can sit back and take a look at the whole thing.
Yeah, I hated it.
Dave...
I'm just jumping in.
Did not hate it.
Oh, sorry. That was me circa our initial assessments.
Yeah.
Almost.
Back when we had Brian on board,
Yeah, you were there. You were there for the beginning, and you're the alpha and the omega.
Yes.
Yeah, of our... discussions of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, after watching the initial 2 episodes back to back, what essentially I would think of as the opening movie for the series, the prequel, whatever you want to call it.
The prelude is the official designation by CBS.
Really? Interesting.
Prelude or prologue? I can't remember, but
it's semantics.
Somebody, another reviewer I read pointed out that if they'd stuck that in the middle as a flashback or a set of flashbacks that slowly doled it out, it would have changed the entire tone of what the show was about. If we started with, who is Michael? What did she do? Do we trust her? Who's right? Who's wrong about
I heard that mentioned. Do y'all know that, like, I think it's sort of the screenwriter William Goldman, that was his kind of advice to screenwriters, is to start as late into a scene as you can and end as early as you can, kind of leave them wanting more. So his thing, like, I'm sure he would have been like, yeah, begin with Burnham arrives in chains or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what's going on? We've never seen a Starfleet officer like this. And we did actually, this came up before because I remember people talking about this, and we at least brought it up. I still kind of like the idea that, and we would have had, like, weirdly, I guess Michelle Yeoh, in scenes kind of more mid-season, right up until she returns in another eviler format. Yeah. What do you think, Father? I know you're skeptical.
Yeah, I actually am kind of glad they didn't do that.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure it would have worked, like, in practice.
The show had enough that it was trying to accomplish. It didn't need to be any more ambitious.
It didn't need to have a clever framing.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially after some of Christopher Nolan's movies, I see, like, too many people trying to make things non-linear just because they think that makes it better. It's like this thinking of, like the more complex manner you're telling the story makes it a smarter story and therefore better.
What's really funny, though, is because you mentioned Nolan, and his Batman Begins does begin at the beginning. He, like, shows little baby Bruce, and then, like, he shows Bruce training, and then he comes to Gotham, and it's actually a very linear thing. Yeah. Now, Memento and other stuff definitely play around in time, but...
Batman Begins has a lot of flashbacks, and it's the least linear of his Dark Knight movies.
Doesn't it? No, it, like, begins with him in Nepal or whatever, right? He's basically about to start his training.
It begins with him in prison, but then it cuts back to him as a kid.
Right.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. If this were the theory, this would begin with him, like, in Gotham as Batman doing stuff, and there would be some sort of thing that flashed back there.
So Burton Batman.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually exactly true. I don't know. I only know this. I did not like the initial structure. And I think part of it was because I was missing the crew bonding thing, which begins around roughly episode 3 when she gets to Discovery, even though at that point they're all kind of petulant towards each other. Yeah. But it was like, I was like, okay, there's some interacting, and these are the leads, and I can start to see them working together and playing off one another. And I would have gotten that just right out of the gate. So I do kind of like that idea still. I don't know what form I wanted it to take in some hypothetical way, but I kind of wish they had done that.
I think it could have worked. I'm also tend to be a total linear whore when it comes to storytelling, so...
That's what I'm always saying. You're such a linear whore.
I'm the guy who's like, well, I'm going to redo the Star Wars movies. Start with episode 1, even though I don't like it. And so...
that is how I rewatch Star Trek. No, that's not true, because I watch Enterprise after I go through Voyager, but then I go back into the original series.
I start with Enterprise.
I just never stopped watching Star Trek. I just keep going.
See, I start with Enterprise, and I'll certainly put Discovery in there before the classic series. And I'm the guy who sorted the classic series into Stardate order, so I'm like, no, linear order. So
y'all hardcore.
I need them.
I'm the guy who never gets around to actually doing any of that. So I'm I'm the black sheep of this family.
Well, what were y'all's just overall thoughts of Discovery? If you had to just describe it in one sentence, how would you describe it?
Do you want to?
Let's see. I thought one sentence. God, it's great to have Star Trek back. Because that was it's the best Star Trek or best Star Trek since Deep Space Nine went off the air. How about that? Yeah. So
it was a long 12 years with no Star Trek, and I never want to do that again the rest of my life.
If I was summing it up in one sentence is tough, but I think I can. For me, what it comes down to is it's great to have a new Star Trek that's doing something different than I've ever seen Trek do before. So for me, it's vive la différence. That's what I'm liking about it, is what sets it apart from the other shows.
Interesting, and
I did. Yes, but so I guess what was your take on the Kelvin universe movies? Because those are very different.
Right,
they were definitely doing something different.
Right. Well, what I need is a certain. I need to ultimately have I need it to be grounded in basic Federation, like Starfleet theory, I guess, or a little bit of that Kirk ethos. The don't believe in the no-win scenario. There was a Star Trek role-playing game that came out in the 80s. I forget if it was it FASA?
FASA. FASA.
And I remember that my brother had that, and in their core book that came out, maybe not their original one, but right around Star Trek 2, they had a core book. Or maybe it was just an era-based book. It's this little hazy memory with kids' memory. But it was interspersed with quotes from Kirk that I think were primarily from Star Trek 2. And they were all those kind of classic Kirk selfless things. If it's me you want, let me have me beamed aboard and spare my crew. Yeah. I don't believe in the no-win scenario. All that sort of stuff that I do think of, like Kirk, as different as he is from Picard, that he kind of broadly embodies sort of the Federation ethos of, exploration, protection of civilization, discovery, and all of that. Picard almost certainly more on the discovery part. Yeah. But and so the show, they've got to hit those notes, and the Kelvin movies didn't necessarily hit those notes for me. There's a few things gripes I have with them.
Everything you just listed it needed to have. I can give you example of where they used those. In the Kelvin
they did, yeah. But they also, I felt, betrayed it at times. I felt that having everybody kind of be a rebel in a way, which is something the movies started leaning towards as far as back to Star Trek 3, I will admit. That I think, and also because they were just the movies and didn't have a TV show to spread out their to do their more what's the word I'm looking for, cerebral shit. They had to jump to the action stuff, and the movies have to have big things happen in them. So the Kelvin verse was slightly hampered by that, but entertaining movies don't quite feel like Trek to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this one did not quite feel like Trek at first either, but it was Trek. I just need to get there. I just needed to see sort of scenarios like it started very dark.
So way back when I told you to reserve judgment until you see the entire serialized story, all 15 episodes.
Uh-huh. You were so right, Fatheree. Why didn't I listen at the time? I was like, oh my god. It sounded like a fucking sage was talking to me, and I didn't listen to him even though he had the long hair and lived on a mountain. I actually don't always buy into that notion of, you gotta wait till the end of the thing to judge it if it's a long-form story arc. Like, if I'm not into it, I'm not into it, and fuck it. But yeah, this one, obviously I reserve judgment. I did this stupid podcast with you. I'm glad I stuck around. I think that we've made the point many times on the show that people who kind of initially might have been put off really did miss out. I think, and I hope that they'll give it another shot. Honestly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it'd be that Like Brian said, I'm thrilled to have Star Trek back on TV, and I'm glad that it's as good as it is. But there's a new regime in charge of making Star Trek now, and that's something that I'm just having to get used to. Mm-hmm. But I am enjoying it. And just, I've talked about before, I think, how the regime changes on Star Trek, how originally you had Roddenberry and Gene Coons and Robert Justman, and then Next Generation, where you had Roddenberry and then later Rick Berman, and that carried into the other shows in the 80s and 90s, and then Enterprise. You also had Harve Bennett making the movies, and you had the Bad Robot people making the newer movies, and now we have the CBS All Access people making Star Trek.
They got one Bad Robot in there.
Yeah, they have Alex Kurtzman, but they also have Ted Sullivan and Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts, who are all new contributors to Star Trek. Mm-hmm. So each one of those regimes had a very unique way of doing things, and I'm still trying to get adjusted to modern Star Trek.
Are you still trying to get adjusted? You feel adjusted to me.
I mean, I'm enjoying it, but it's just
You're like, the Klingon War didn't happen this way.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with how the Klingon War happened. I think Deep Space Nine did a better war story, but I was satisfied with what Discovery did with their Klingon War.
It seemed like ultimately they actually didn't want to tell... It was less a war story they were telling than a story about a crew during a war.
Yeah.
I don't think they wanted us to really... They did at no time really played up the scope of it. Talked about fronts of the battle or what's going on here.
Briefly mentioned, but not the way
it's
Deep
real
Space Nine.
The war was the setting, not the story.
Yeah. Right. And I think that early on they kind of didn't necessarily say that. I mean, they made it sort of sound like it was a war story, but that might have just been my impression of it, and press junkets and all that stuff you're not necessarily... basically, I don't know if they quite accurately represented what it was, but because it had so many twists and turns, I understand why they were probably kind of being a little shy about saying exactly what it was. They had a lot of things that they could not reveal about the nature of Lorca, about places they would be going, like the Mirror Universe, They wanted to say that it'll... Did they say that they'd be doing a lot of discovering type stuff? Because they didn't do a ton of that.
No, they never said that, but they've said that they're going to be doing that in season 2.
Okay.
So that's something.
They did discover a lot of stuff. It just was often tied in with the spore drive.
Yeah. Right, that's true.
So it was definitely a largely a science vessel doing science
like
stuff.
We discovered that a tardigrade doesn't like being hooked up to the ship's battery.
Yeah.
We didn't know.
But it was part of one big 15-episode story. Right. So it wasn't like a typical season of Star Trek where you're like, oh yeah, this is the season where like they found a Borg named Hugh, and they also met Troy's mom again, and had like a whole bunch of a variety of different
about
explorations.
as arced as a lot of Deep Space Nine was, in my opinion.
To an extent, I mean,
there's a certain confidence Discovery has because they know what they're aiming for an ending. Whereas Deep Space Nine was arced, but a lot of times you could tell they weren't quite sure where they were going with this, so they'd hedge their bets on certain statements and certain events.
They just had longer seasons too, right? Like twice as long, roughly.
I don't know, close.
26 episode seasons
instead of 15.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So a little more time to fill in. Therefore, probably always going to be a few more little standalones, I would assume, around the big.
Yeah, I mean, Deep Space Nine season 5 ended with a cliffhanger, and then season 6 opens with like a 6-episode arc, and that kind of goes back into like a little bit more episodic, and then, but still has like recurring serialized things that are stringed together through the episodic episodes, and then it ended on like a 10-part. 10-episode
extravaganza.
Yeah. It was extravagant.
Let's be decadent.
But on Star Trek Discovery, what would you say were some of the high points in the first season? Starting with Brian, what were some of the things that really stood out that you liked?
I love the emphasis on the importance of science, of the importance on skepticism and objectivity and gathering data before making conclusions, on not always going with your gut, And the fact that they explicitly spell this out, which has kind of been taken as read in previous Star Trek, but I really appreciated the fact that they said, no, science is important, it gets shit done. We need it.
Right. Sometimes it's even fucking cool.
Yes. And I really love that. I did love some of the, rousing, pedantic speeches that Star Trek is so well known for. There were stuff there that I would put right next to Picard or Kirk as far as some of the good speeches.
What's the Richard Dawkins quote? Science, it fucking works.
I believe he says, it works, bitches. I literally just watched it the other day, and there's like that slight pause. I don't know where he picked up on that little bit of internet style vernacular, but it's amazing.
So I really liked that a lot. I liked the nuanced complexity of the characters in that they would when a lesser writer would have had them swerve right, they would suddenly swerve left against their character type.
Yeah.
I mean, like the first one for Stamets was when he suddenly gets into this rant about the wonders of the spore drive and how Lorca's screwing it all up when they're on that shuttle in the third episode.
Right.
And I was like, okay, there's so much more to Stamets than I had seen up until this point. I thought he was, he's this way for a reason.
A principled asshole is, I think, how I've described a principled prick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And other little moments where, people just, they weren't slaves to their 4-line character summary.
Right.
And when they stepped out of it, it made sense in the context of why and why they were stepping out of that.
Right. It felt like the way people sometimes do surprising things or will work against their interests or do something, be prompted to do something unusual, but within the bounds of their personalities.
Yes. Whereas that's something I felt that Berman Trek, for example, often had a bit of a problem with, is that they couldn't break out of those molds very often. Right. And they were very well written within that, but they rarely surprised you.
Right. And part of that was just the episodic format of it all.
Yeah, you have to hit the reset button. You have to return to status quo.
Yeah.
The character stuff you mentioned is a big part of what I liked about it, that they were really strong characters, or they proved to be, and that they several of them had pretty notable arcs. So Tilly, who early on was kind of the awkward, I wondered if autistic, a very awkward character, and who seemed like a lot of people, I think, even found her annoying at first. Some people still do. Those people are wrong.
I think most people find her adorable, though.
I think that is primarily the case.
Actually, I think my girlfriend finds her annoying, but
her brand of awkwardness, I think, did rub people the wrong way, and
I liked her.
But yeah, like I was early on, I wasn't quite sure what to make of her, but like by her, like I guess second episode, she started moving towards being a favorite character, and she had a very notable arc. Then you had Saru, who went from being a character, I was like, well, he's visually neat, but he's no Spock yet. But he ended up with a strong character arc and emerged sort of much more nuanced by the end of the series. Stamets, we've already talked about.
I thought they did do a great job with Saru, because that's a character that would be easy to pigeonhole. Right. And they managed to give him a gravitas, an intelligence, a strength under all of that cow nature.
There's one thing I didn't like, and that was episode 8, when they had him go crazy on the planet Pavo, where
that's what I think of as almost like an homage to original Trek, because he's like dun, 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 dun.
Where would Star Trek be without somebody goes crazy because something in the water?
But it wasn't something in the water. They explained at the end of the episode that it was just him. Like he that was like a sincere reaction.
That's true. That was kind of like, well, yeah, all that. But he was still prompted by whatever. But I forget, what did the aliens offer him, or what did they say?
He didn't feel fear for the first time in his life when he was on that planet.
That's reasonable to assume that something like that especially for his race would be such a life-altering moment that all of that like repression from his, not just like a time period but his entire life, might explode into anger like that.
That totally makes sense, but
they didn't really show it.
Well, I didn't like the way that they showed it, but besides that, I thought it kind of made his arc have this one little inconsistency in it, where we see him take command a couple of times, and at first he doubts himself, and then he has that moment where he tells the computer, I don't need the evaluation for my command performance. I know how I did. And then we actually see him like kind of get over his hard feelings for Burnham, and when they're in the mirror universe and they're the stakes are very high and they're in serious danger, he starts calling her Michael instead of Burnham, and he even refers to her as his friend. He's has his guard down around her instead of being all scared and paranoid she was gonna sabotage the mission. And I think that having that episode 8 in the exact middle of the season where like he gets really pissy with her, and then immediately after that it dials back. I think you have like this
think you're right,
consistent
that it's kind
arc
of like
this one little deviation that throws it off.
Like realistically, it could have happened just that way. In fact, it did because that's what they said it did. But yeah, as far as dramatic structure-wise, it's a little weird to a character that you're giving like such a sort of slow and nuanced arc to have one storyline where he busts out.
It could have been structured a little neater.
If he'd referenced the busting out in later episodes, they kind of just...
That would have been kind of nice.
They kind of do just throw, okay, that happened last week, we don't talk about that. And, and so perhaps, I would agree if they'd referenced it more, it would have been stronger. Like something I learned when I was trying to kill you was...
that would have been the hack.
There is no more powerful attack than the double fist slam.
He has the donkey kick. He has like the donkey kick.
I thought there was something in there.
Yeah, he had the donkey kick and the running. The running was amazing.
Well, that's another thing. I know we're gonna get into our complaints for the show later. This is such a minor little trivial nitpick, but I kind of don't like that Kelpians apparently have greater than human strength. Because it kind of feels like every alien in Star Trek is stronger than humans.
Yeah.
And if he's supposed to be like this prey species, I think it would have been cool if he's like super fast. Maybe he's like really light and has like strong
under a
legs.
punch.
Well,
with a single
he might have like a strong donkey kick as like a self-defense move, but like other than that, he's kind of
I don't remember exactly. Certainly the kicking was in line with those running. Those things could go together pretty nicely. The running and the kicking.
But I didn't need him to like crush communicators with his hands. Like I thought it was a bit much.
It's a little bit too tropey for Trek, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, Vulcans are stronger than humans. Klingons are stronger than humans. I guess Romulans.
How about
Romulans are Vulcans.
I know Andorians are kind of more.
Yeah, but Romulans grew up. I mean, Romulans grew up on a different planet, so they might not be as strong if it was like lower gravity or something. But
it might be a little weaker, but
we never.
They have pointed ears. They're strong.
We never saw Romulans show how strong they were until Star Trek 09. So.
Well, yeah, but if you look at what Spock was able to do, even if Romulans are half as strong, that's still way stronger than most humans. That's like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
They can only partially crush a monitor when they smash it.
Vulcans are 3 times stronger than humans.
Yeah.
And 3 times faster.
So half as much would still be 1.5 times stronger than a human.
Which I think engineered cons have 5 times your strength.
I'm not going to complain about.
Data has the strength of 10 men. As long as we're
I will never complain about seeing Khan fight a Vulcan. I always thought that would be a cool thing, and I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a bunch of things getting there that could have been done better, but
sure.
I was happy with that result. But
you may want to go ahead and broadly say.
Okay.
I'm just going to quick pepper though. Like there's a bunch of things to production values are through the roof. Ships look badass as hell.
That's what I was about to say, damn it.
Sorry, you go ahead and say what you're going to say, because I was just going to throw out a bunch of stuff and it might hit a bunch of things you're going to say.
I was going to say I do love the production value in the show. It looks fantastic. You can tell that they're putting like $10 million in each episode.
It was only 8.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 8. But
only $8 million.
Only $8 million, yeah.
If they put $10 million in, we'd see his ganglia more often.
But the designs are fantastic looking as far as realistic. Mm-hmm. The CGI is some of the best I've ever seen on TV.
Prop department, I love what the props.
Yeah, they did some stuff with it that they didn't even necessarily need to do, but they did that was cool. Like so, when the spore drive kicks in. It's kind of crazy looking. It threw me at first, but it looks cool as hell. Their little flippy ship thing, and coming up with those kind of that kind of neat stuff or the thought that went into the Emperor's what do they call her ship in the Mirror Universe?
Oh, the Charon, the flagship of the Empire.
Yeah, like there was they were really thinking about things and then trying to give you something beyond just a realistically rendered ship, but something interesting about it. It did seem like there was I don't know if we talked about this before, but fewer shots of kind of establishing shots of ships. I think part of that.
Yeah, that irritates me that they don't do that often.
Do you think it was? I mean, do they just think people kind of static shots of ships moving around is Grandpa's Star Trek?
That's one of the things I'm talking about. This new regime does things differently.
It's
where,
true.
They'll have this audio of a character, through dialogue saying there's a ship nearby. Whereas on the Next Generation, they would have just reused a clip from Encounter at Farpoint and showed the Enterprise next to an Excelsior class starship.
Yeah, right.
It would be the USS Hood again.
Right,
but.
And we do see some of that. We do see some ships on the monitors, and then suddenly, next thing you know, Admiral what's her name?
Cornwell.
And Sarek are just beaming right onto your bridge. They don't even care.
And we don't see her ship.
Do they? Yeah. Does it not park on the screen in front of them ish?
Well, no, the first time she comes over to talk to Lorca we don't see it.
Okay.
And they say that the Admiral's cruiser is here, and I'm wondering, is that a Constitution class if it's a cruiser?
That, and of course they wouldn't want to show that because of the big reveal at the end of the first season.
I like the designs of the ships.
Uh-huh.
I did not enjoy the overly stylized lighting and of the ships. I kind of...
Exterior, interior, both?
Exterior.
Okay.
Interior was fine. I had no problem with the inside
Yeah.
of the ship's lighting or the design. The exterior, I love the designs, but the multicolored, hyper stylized kind of...
Did it always look like that they were in the Mutara Nebula? Or
yeah,
something?
it was something like that, and I just wanted to see the ships lit they would look in the 90s Star Trek,
right.
just so I could see what they look like.
I have this feeling that they specifically said, let's stake out our own territory, and whatever you do, don't look like the 90s Star Trek.
I mean, it didn't have to be all the shots, but occasionally, just... I don't know what color the ships are. Yeah. The Starfleet ships, what color are they? I'm going to assume...
They're a violet, orange, indigo sort of...
Yeah, exactly.
Hue.
I'm going to assume a sort of a grayish white, because that's what Starfleet always goes with, but... I don't honestly know what color these ships are.
The Kelvin movies, although they did a lot more kind of quick-moving camera work and stuff like that, I believe were pretty clear about the looks of the ships.
Yeah, I love the way that J.J. Abrams photographed the Enterprise, because it always felt massive.
Yes.
And you would have these long beauty shots of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that they would shoot the ships like that on Discovery a little, because they feel kind of small and...
It does feel like I wonder if they decided our season is going to be about characters. And said the ships will have character, but they're not going to get the screen time that maybe Trek fans are used to. I hadn't really thought about it until we kind of had this conversation, but yeah, I miss the establishing shots too.
Yeah,
and, because like a kid, I guess putting it myself if I was a kid watching this and it was my first Star Trek, there is something about the Star Trek about loving those ships.
Yeah.
Oh man, that Klingon D7 is the coolest. I want to have a model of that, and I want to find out. I want schematics of that. I want to find out how it works.
And the lens flare in the Kelvin universe, which lens flare is a fine artistic trick in your films, but it has to be used symbolically to mean something. It should be relevant. If you put it everywhere, it becomes meaningless. They did the same thing with the ships. They're all indigo, green, violet, and they do it in every single shot, so it becomes
That's
meaningless.
their homage to the caves that Kirk used to walk through.
So whereas they go into a nebula to find Sarek, and... It looks the same as every other place. There's really no difference. They're not. This doesn't look different.
I'm okay with space not always just being black with some stars. I'm okay with it having some color and making it pop a little bit.
To be honest, it wasn't so much the backdrops as the way they lit the ships.
But yeah, I can understand.
Got old.
I can understand having an issue with how the ships look.
Well, they did give us a pretty money shot of Enterprise, and there are times I feel like we saw good shots of at least the models of Discovery and Shenzhou and stuff like that, but they tended to not linger on them, and like you said, the lighting was always kind of very subjective. So I'll be curious where they go visually in season 2. Is that going to be their standard operating procedure, or are they going to change it up to kind of suit whatever the theme of the season is?
I think it would be jarring if they abandoned it completely in
Right.
season 2. I think they'd have to ease their way out of it, otherwise it would feel weird.
No, but I would like to just because I think the ships do look really good, and I would like just to see more of them.
Yeah,
but yes,
show that shit off, y'all.
Some of the other things I liked was the all the little Easter eggs they'd throw in, like the little fan servicey references to a planet that was mentioned in an episode of The Next Generation, or the Gorn skeleton, or just little stuff like that.
A little obelisk from this side of paradise.
Yeah. I loved that.
It's like, that's some obscure stuff.
Even though, like, I know this is like the low-hanging fruit, like it's easy to do that fan servicey stuff, but it helps.
You think they did it in a way that wasn't obnoxious or anything like that?
Yeah, like I think they handled it better than, say, The Force Awakens.
No.
Which, also about The Force Awakens, the thing I like most about Star Trek Discovery is how bold it is. How they didn't care about playing it safe. They
Felt like they were going where no one has gone before.
Exactly. Yeah, they did go where no Star Trek had gone before. Whereas The Force Awakens, they're going to make the first Star Wars movie in years, and they tried to make it the safest movie as possible, and that's my big criticism of that movie is how derivative it is. I still like it, but
that's the same orders. I didn't even like The Force Awakens because it was so safe, but that's the orders I would have given the writers. We need to sell this one movie. This movie, as J.J. Abrams said, has to delight.
Now, what's
it
interesting?
must delight.
What's interesting is that
we're getting.
But this brings up an interesting question, because now a movie franchise is, I guess, bigger than a TV franchise as far as the income it can generate, but. Trek was also in an awkward spot. We'd gone 10 years? 12 years without Trek.
I mean,
and
we
the
had
previous
movies,
one,
but...
the previous one had not necessarily gone over great with fans. Parts yes, parts no, but
we're talking about Enterprise.
Enterprise is what is the elephant in the room there, and then so they had a lot of pressure on them here. They could have also played it safe, and they did choose to boldly go. They were also testing out a new distribution model.
Yeah.
And
with CBS All Access.
So going less traditional was, they could have just basically done all that special effects and money towards a more traditional Trek. I think do you think you would have liked that, either of y'all?
I would have enjoyed it just because I would have been happy to have Star Trek back, and if it wasn't bad, but I wouldn't want it to be like the Orville where they're repeating episods of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
with some slight differences.
Yeah, well...
You're paying $10 a month for those slight differences.
If I'm going to pay $10 a month, I want it to be big and bad and bold and something new that I haven't seen before.
Yeah. Well, that's something else I wanted to bring up is... There was the unexpected nature of the show. That it worked, they mentioned Game of Thrones as a thematic influence or maybe even structural influence early on. And very much like Game of Thrones, there was what is going to happen next? I have no idea, who is going to live, who is going to die.
Especially during that Mirror Universe arc. I was on the edge of my... I felt like I was watching Game of Thrones. 'Cause I'm a pretty big Game of Thrones fan, I guess. And I had that same type of sensation where I'm like, oh my god, is this character going to live? Oh, how is this going to affect everything? And then when it would get to the end credits, I'd be like, no, I have to wait a week. I have to wait till next Sunday to see what happens next.
Right. And that's something that is, while there's traditionally in a kind of done in one style of most of the Trek previous incarnations, there's great dramatic moments throughout, but not quite. They don't sort of push it to that edge of...
Except unless it's a season finale, and then they
That's
get it pretty regularly.
Every once in a while, Picard walks out and he's a boarder.
Yeah. And Riker's got a fire at him.
Yeah. What the fuck?
I'm so glad I wasn't seeing that at the time, because I would have hated to have to wait an entire summer
for
that. But
it's pretty exciting.
The big one for me was season 3 of Voyager, when they meet the Borg.
Yeah.
And then season 5 of Deep Space Nine, where the Dominion take over the station and the war really gets started.
Yeah.
It's I remember having to wait a summer for that and just be like, oh, I can't wait till the fall. Why do I have to wait so long?
What's interesting is Discovery's cliffhanger was more of a more to come, kind of like what will be our next storyline. It wasn't a cliffhanger in the sense of will the characters get out of this danger in the traditional cliffhanger
I wouldn't even call it a cliffhanger. You're talking about like the Enterprise showing up?
Yeah. It is really just more of a...
It was more of a tag.
Get ready for this, y'all.
Yeah, it was...
y'all ready for this?
It was a Marvel Studios in credit
Yeah, that's what I was
scene,
just thinking. It's a sting.
Yeah, right. That was Samuel Jackson asking if they'd heard about the Avengers Initiative.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be like Pike with an eye patch. He's going to ask them about the Enterprise Initiative.
He's already got a wheelchair. Doesn't he?
Well, but we're heaping enough praise on the show. I feel like we should get into the things that we didn't like. Just some of the things that really stood out that you wish they had done differently or done better. Starting with Brian.
Well, the moment of fan rage that I'm embarrassed to report is when they called something that was clearly not a Klingon D7 a D7.
No.
The Klingons looking different was only just mildly irritating, but somehow that D7, no, that is not a D7. Take that back.
I believe I had a similar reaction.
Now, putting that aside, I think the thing I didn't like that was meaningful was when they put evil Giorgio in charge of Discovery. I was like, maybe make her the leader of that particular mission as some sort of advisor, but don't make her captain of the ship. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
I was thinking this show's doing so much better than JJ Trek at not putting irresponsible people in charge of starships, and then you had to piss it all away there, right? 2 episodes to the end.
In a way, that sort of goes to my, primary complaint, which I think we have talked about it in a couple past episodes, which is that occasionally, while they do very dramatic things, saying she's the captain is more dramatic than saying she will be an acting advisor.
Yeah.
They sometimes don't necessarily seem to proceed forward organically from the events that we saw previously, or they sometimes just stretch wait, would they really do that? It's dramatic, but would they really do that?
Yeah, that's the conclusion that we came to, was that often the show will do not what is the most organic, but what is the most dramatic.
Right. What I think of as it was a thing that I both liked and disliked about Battlestar Galactica during its run.
Yeah.
And it definitely does have advantages sometimes. Sometimes you're on your edge of your seat, and sometimes they do something that you really like when they're doing something really dramatic like that, and you're like, holy shit.
I was willing to go with them on just about everything, except that one, which I could only fix in my head by saying, Cornwell is probably Section 31, and I can totally see Section 31 putting evil Giorgio in charge of Discovery. So, all right, now I can go back to watching the show.
That character is forever tainted in your headcanon now.
Cornwell?
She's evil Black Ops.
She ordered them to genocide Kronos. She's kind of tainted anyway.
That is about as anti-Federation as you can get, but it did sort of bring it around to some of the early on. I was like, well, I'm not even sure they're going to be really pushing the Federation thing in the first episode when when even the Vulcans are off for saying, well, the way you say hi to a Klingon, the Vulcan hello to them is you hit them, you bloody their nose.
But what we know about older Vulcans from Enterprise, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. The asshole Vulcans totally...
Yeah, because I agree.
They say that first contact between Vulcans and Klingons took place 150 years before Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. So that would have happened in 2016.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Two years ago, Klingons and Vulcans met each other. And it didn't go too well.
I have this mental image of Shran holding his nose with blue blood running down, going, fucking Klingon, hello. We're not Klingons!
That was my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Well, the idea of Brass and Starfleet Command wanting to kill all the Klingons, it's actually come up before. It happened in Star Trek 6. It happened in Star Trek Into Darkness.
Right. So. And I kept on I've mentioned this in past episodes too, the Mass Effect thing, where in the one of the big backstory things in the Mass Effect game series was the Krogans, when the fast producing warrior race, fast reproducing warrior race, were on the edge of essentially taking over the galaxy. and they infected them with a gene virus that like made only like 1 in like 1,000 pregnancies come to term. So it was like they did something really bad to stop what seemed like what would have been the inevitable fascistic takeover. And I'm like, I am fascinated by stories where people are pushed to the absolute limit of what their morality would allow. It's Deep Space Nine-ish territory. But
New Battlestar Galactica territory.
New Galactica territory for sure. And so, under those conditions, which they did lead us to believe, we weren't sure. We thought at first they were going to have to time travel to undo the Klingons were about to win the war. And I was like, well, maybe they're just going to have it where they pull them back from the very brink of winning, and it'll just still continue. And this is just Star Trek history that we just had never quite heard about. And that's how they played it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
But
again, that's them doing what's the most dramatic and not what is the most organic.
Right.
And they do have some.
Although it's not like, they were operating a Black Ops ship. That's what the Discovery was. That ship clearly had Lorca had pretty strong leeway to do what needed to be done to win the war.
Yeah.
So, we didn't really exactly see a lot of top brass at Starfleet. It may have been, but I guess, Cornwell had to have probably gotten some people to sign off on the Klingon genocide, I guess. So
Sarek signed off on it. That was one of my complaints about the show. I was like, did you have to do that to a character that we know and have liked for decades? Even though I know he's always kind of been an asshole.
He was pushed to the brink. The Klingons were going to take over the whole galaxy.
It kind of makes sense.
It's not just the Vulcan hello. Here's the Vulcan goodbye.
with Sarek being involved in that, I guess it does kind of make sense in Star Trek VI why he would push for Spock to try to engage in peace talks.
I hadn't thought about that, but
it's been so long since I've seen it.
Sarek
what does he
would be a bit of a poison chalice.
What does he do in Star Trek VI?
He, Spock opens up diplomatic channels with the Klingons because his dad was basically asking him to or telling him to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you think he was trying to, what would you call it, redeem himself?
Yeah, or at least make sure that we didn't go into the same type of situation where we have a vulnerability on the Klingon spotted. We should strike.
Right.
We probably wanted to make sure that the Federation didn't do that again.
That's interesting. I like the idea of trying to make it fit. Yeah. This is a Marvel Comics no prize moment.
So maybe it is more organic than we're giving it credit for.
It's possible. It's possible. Do you think that was on their mind, or do you think that they're like, the fans will make it work?
I think if I asked the writers, was that on your mind, they would say yes. Yeah. But I think they would be lying.
Well, they did have Nicholas Myers, and they did keep referencing Star Trek VI.
That's true, they did have...
I'm pretty sure they all sat the writers down and made them watch Star Trek VI at some point.
That is actually conceivable, that they were sort of pushing for an early days, somewhat more aggressive Sarek with his sexy leather outfit. So harsh. So dangerous.
We will not eat meat, but I will certainly kill that cow and make a cool jacket out of it.
I'm going to throw out a minor complaint because it was kind of really below my radar with all the other stuff I was liking. But it's only noticeable in retrospect, which is that I feel like the music did not jump out as much as I was hoping it might. I felt like that a lot of the Next Gen and On era music was a little flat compared to the
Rick Berman's fault. That was Rick Berman.
He deliberately wanted to avoid the...
He didn't want the music to distract from what was going on.
They got the music in Best of Both Worlds was nominated for an Emmy or something. Yeah. And right after that writer, I can't remember.
Did he disappear?
They never hired that composer again.
Yeah, Berman was never put in that good of music ever again.
Oh, man.
We do not want to get nominated for any more Emmys.
So I told you I had to make my peace with Next Generation, and that's probably a big part of it because I really liked the dramatic music, the original series, so many hummable themes. Yeah. And that explains a lot. I did not know that there was such an overt... I thought it was just kind of this is our philosophy, is to just kind of keep it on the down low. But I did not know it was so specific. But in any case, I did feel that Discovery was a chance for them to somewhat redeem that and to have a somewhat more dramatic themes. And I haven't listened to the soundtrack. I think you
have, and I've not. The opening theme is still great. I love it, but the music on the rest of that disc is just the same sort of wallpaper music that Dennis McCarthy gave us throughout all of Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
And that is only the music for Chapter 1.
It is the Volume 1.
9 episodes.
Maybe Volume 2 will be more exciting.
Volume 2 will be more exciting because the Mirror Universe has some good music.
Oh, okay. Well, I will certainly pick up Volume 2 because I get all the soundtracks, or a lot of them. But
this is probably a little too Star Warsy. But I wonder everybody like if some of the major characters did have their own theme. I guess that'd probably that'd get after a while that'd get annoying if they had leitmotifs.
But I see them do that like on stuff that's not even like that great of TV shows. Like the CW shows, all the superhero Arrow and Flash and all that. Like those shows are fine. Mm-hmm. They're not great prestige television, in my opinion.
Like that sort of rising violin thing on Flash. The
or who is Merlin on Arrow?
Yeah,
like he has a theme anytime he shows up. Or
there were some themes. For
is it too cheesy? Do you think it'd be too like
Lorca's theme? The Kelvin universe plays with some themes. There's definitely a sort of a Spock Uhura thing that shows up in all 3 movies during the Spock Uhura.
Khan had a theme.
There was some themes, and
I guess if
Spock has a theme in the old '60s series. There's a very definite Spock
I can play that on my bass.
Yeah. You're talking about the boom boom boom.
Yeah.
Boom boom boom. Yeah, that's an amazing theme. And James Horner, who scored two Trek movies, 2 and 3. I think that was it.
2 and
yes. He didn't have, I think, necessarily
character. Some of the next gen films, didn't he?
No, I don't think so. I think that was. Alan Silvestri?
Goldsmith did
Goldsmith for sure.
First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis. I can't remember who did Generation.
That's a motion picture, right?
Generations was Dennis McCarthy.
Yeah, there's Dennis McCarthy.
But
and it wasn't that good.
I don't think James Horner had some of the more hummable themes. I think with Khan's attack and all that stuff. Yeah. And he tended to, I think, not do... Well, he ripped himself off a lot. That's what Horner was kind of known for doing. He was a talented composer, but he ripped off his own
You get to hear that Khan attack theme again in 4 years later in Aliens.
Yes. Right. And also, I think prior to that, probably in Krull, which I was just listening to the soundtrack to that on YouTube the other day. I love it. But I'm like, wow, that's the Mutar Nebula right there. Anyway... he, I think, did less theming of around people and more around kind of ideas. This the sort of the Genesis theme. Khan, I think, in his presence had a kind of a menacing theme that recurred a few times. I guess maybe something like that might be more what I'd like, which is a theme for the Discovery, a theme for their kind of when they're doing scientific endeavors, theme for, maybe Burnham should get her own theme. I feel like she might deserve it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
It is a low-level complaint. I don't think I really thought about it much during the season. I wouldn't mind if they beefed it up in season 2 and tried some different shit.
But that's been a long-term complaint for Star Trek with me, is that it is so inconsistent with the music.
Yeah.
Except for the those opening notes from the original series.
Right.
Score, but other than that,
which now like those just few notes do have a lot of weight to them, which I like.
And they do keep that in Star Trek Discovery, the opening credits.
I was reading the one of the 50-year mission history of Star Trek book, and every single composer who would get a crack at Star Trek after the original series would say, "Oh yeah, the original theme song. I love those first few bars, but the rest of it is rubbish." And then another composer from Star Trek 2 says the exact same thing, and
that's funny.
And they want me to
use
the
whole the theme that had lyrics and stuff.
Yeah. Nobody likes that. It's very consistent,
it's
independently.
It's iconic, but viewed objectively, it's kind of a weirdly almost romantic sounding kind of schmaltzy.
It's not like the theme to Doctor Who or Knight Rider or something that's perfect for what it's supposed to be.
The top TV score,
right? TV opening. Next Generation theme is awesome. It is objectively
it's the motion.
Well, whatever.
Score.
It was still perfect for what they
They
did.
had a Next Generation score. Yeah, they had a TNG score that they threw out. They're like, let's just use the one from the movie.
Yeah. I just the other day listened to the alternate opening song and track, and it was interesting. I did not particularly like it. Yeah. By the way, we did bring it because y'all brought up the Kelvin verse. I have to say, I do think what's the composer? I can't say his name.
That's Italian.
Michael Giacchino.
Yeah.
Giacchino. I don't know if it's a hard C. But I loved his theme for the motion for the Kelpie verse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of his other work in it was very good too. But it was like I was like, wow, that was not rooted in the original Trek music. Was not a knockoff of James Horner's stuff or Goldsmith stuff.
But it felt compatible with
with them, and so I thought he was. That's actually something that they like. If I were running the circus, I might say, "Hey, look to this for some ideas about what we might do to stake out our own territory."
Yeah, I will say some of the best Star Trek music comes from some of the worst Star Trek.
Like certain episodes, you mean?
Well, I mean, Star Trek V soundtrack is amazing.
Well, that was Jerry Goldsmith coming back.
Oh man, yeah, Goldsmith can always knock it out.
Yeah, the Kelvin universe, the movies are a little uneven, but the soundtracks are amazing.
Yeah,
I actually think Star Trek Into Darkness has like the best, even though it kind of plays around with the musical aesthetics of Star Trek. We kind of have like you have some piano stuff going on, and it gets a little out of the normal box for Star Trek music, but it's good.
Yeah, season 1 and 2 of The Next Generation has some of the best music of the whole run of the show.
That was before they must have been before they clamped down.
Yes, before Roddenberry was out of the picture and Rick Berman says, we want wallpaper. So.
What else do we have as far as like things that didn't jab for us?
I did have... Do you think there was a version of the script where Giorgio... where Michael Burnham sides with Lorca instead of Mirror Giorgio in the Mirror Universe quartet, and then it's Giorgio it's Lorca and Michael Burnham who get back, and then it's Michael Burnham, who they now know is from the Mirror Universe, who's put back in command of Discovery.
I think the plan was always for Lorca to be kind of the main enemy.
Which they covered up very well.
Giorgio
they just had him as like a...
But he still would have been the main enemy. In the end, on Kronos, we still would have had that big confrontation.
But what is your notion is that Burnham sides with him, and how does that play out in the Mirror Universe?
Well, basically everything plays out the same, except Michael
Burnham
saves Lorca instead of Michael saves Michael saves evil Lorca instead of saving evil Giorgio. And
thematically, I think she had to save Giorgio. But Lorca had become such a fan favorite at that point, and I really liked the character. I liked him more than I liked Michelle Yeoh because she had just had less screen time. She didn't have time to endear herself to me.
Yeah.
So I liked her as Michelle Yeoh, not necessarily as Commander Giorgio.
And we are getting a little ahead of ourselves talking about like kind of the overall story of the season, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I have something I want to say on that, but just like my final complaints I'm going to throw out there. I hate that we never learned what the black badges are. I'm hoping that's something they pick up on season 2, because that was kind of annoying that they take the time to point that out. And
it wasn't just we're Black Ops ships, we have Black Ops badges.
No, they've never said they're a Black Ops ship. I think that's more just what people are assuming.
The badges
they were filled with experimental stuff. Like
they're going to have to come up with something to explain the badges as something other than Black Ops.
We never only wear it while they're on the ship, like when they're in their clubhouse.
Nobody wears it except for one guy and a character, one of the convicts that come on in episode 3 where like, I've never seen a black badge before, and no one sees one again after that.
I mean, let's go to the real answer. Do we think that it's something that they thought would be cool, and then they were like, oh, we don't exactly know what we're doing with this. It's not quite what the actual ship is meant to be. We're actually making people think it's a Black Ops ship, like Dave, and it's not.
I don't know. Maybe.
And then they just drop. They're just like, let's just stop talking about it.
My hunch is that they were planning on revealing Section 31 in Season 1. When they discovered they were getting a Season 2, they said, let's save that for Season 2.
It's interesting.
And then that's why the Section 31 references are at the front end and suddenly vanish as they decide.
It's hard for me to guess because I still don't know where they're going in Season 2. Like, it's all part of, like, an ongoing big planned story, and, like, you know, we kept on wondering, like, are they going to end up time traveling all the time with the Spore Drive, and they still get their anthology show? Are they going to end up post-Voyager, and we get our post-Voyager show? Like, they could still do any of those things, and I don't know.
And just a couple other complaints I have I'm going to run through real quick is that while I like the production value of the show and how great the effects look and stuff, and I love a lot of the designs.
This is about Klingons, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some of the designs I don't like. I'm okay with changing the Klingons. Klingons have changed their look before. I just wish they would have changed to something for the better, and not for the worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I also feel that the alien makeup in general is a little over-designed. One of the cool things about when Michael Westmore was doing all of the alien makeup in Star Trek was that even the more elaborate aliens like Klingons or Ferengi, he had a very good sense of how to design prosthetics where you don't disable the actor's
ability to
emote.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these Klingons and Kelpians and some of the background creatures on Discovery, they're just... The design mentality is make it look as alien as possible. And that's why some people didn't recognize L'Rell when she showed up on episode 5, I believe.
I think I was confused for a little bit.
Yeah, and the Kelpians...
I was like, she does not wear... L'Rell does not have prison fatigues.
the Kelpians that Michael Burnham had to select to figure out which one they were going to have for dinner.
Mirror Universe, yeah.
A lot of people were like, oh, is that Saru? I remember seeing online people were like, oh, I can't believe that they ate Mirror Universe Saru. And it's like, no, like, you just can't tell the Kelpians apart because the makeup's over-designed.
Because you're racist.
So...
Speciesist.
Yes, that's right. I think there's something to be said for that, and I think they are actually doing exactly what you think they are. They're like, they have chosen as their virtue they want to pursue is probably aliens that look more alien over their ability to emote. The more things look like us, the more they have a recognizable facial structure, the more we will immediately identify what those facial, what those emotions are. And I think they did decide to, probably because Trek's been doing that since forever, to like, what if we went more towards the weird aliens, pushed what we can do with the special effects, and let the actors. I think they probably thought that the actors would sell it, and I think in some cases they have, like Saru.
Yes.
And that's because he's a trained mime, and he has like this great control over his body language.
He's also got a lot more screen time than background character alien types and stuff. So, I don't know quite if I don't know if that one particularly registered for me, but I could see it. What was I going to say? That while you were talking about it, that reminded me of some sort of minor issue I had. You mentioned the D7s. Yeah, that was a pain in the butt.
I thought the Klingon ships as a whole were...
They're ugly ships.
Yeah, they're not. They're ugly as opposed in a bad way.
They wanted to make the point that the Klingons were non-unified, and they had all these. Every house had a different one,
a different shitty design.
But yeah, unfortunately, that is kind of what it amounted to. There was the D7s, the classic D7. It's one of those things where you throw 3 of those on ships on a screen, and you're in trouble. Like it's an immediate, like, those are vultures circling.
It's a timeless design.
To pick your bones.
It still looks as great now as it looked in the 60s.
And of course, the Bird of Prey is probably one of the most famous non-Enterprise ship in Star Trek.
Thank you, Star Trek 4.
And I think that they probably made a choice to try and like make it more character centric, which they did a great job with. But it would be neat to have the ships take on a bit more character themselves.
And if you're going to make things character-centric, give me the ability to connect to the alien characters beyond Saru.
That's what I was going to say, is like, actually, their promise of the Klingons, of us getting into the head of the Klingons for the war, I don't feel like I particularly felt like I had a better sense of who the Klingons are as a people than I had in either the original series for their Klingons or Next Generation and onward for their Klingons. In fact, I think I felt more interested in and invested in the Next Generation era Klingons. The various stories that they told over Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and other stuff about the Klingons.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Klingons in Discovery, but it was kind of because all these other shows had done a bunch of work to get me to enjoy Klingons.
Right.
And if I'd come to this show cold, I don't think I would have really cared about these Klingons at all.
The ultimate fan service they could offer me now is that a house, like you said, Fatheree, a house rises up amidst the turmoil, possibly, with L'Rell backing them maybe as the most honorable house or whatever, and that house has recognizable, like the black battle armor, and they have their interpretation of it. They can do their interpretation of it, but they have the D7s and stuff that we know.
Yeah, they have the 1960s disruptors.
Yeah, that'd be the shit. I'd be all over it.
The hand disruptors.
Yes.
But, so moving away from complaints.
Yep.
One last thing. synthesizers or replicators and all but name, that kind of bothers me. But
that's one of those things that's off. Like I don't do the tech side of the fandom really, so I didn't notice it. I didn't notice the hologram stuff either that bugs some people.
Well, that's not a fully functional holodeck though. That's
right.
But you can fudge that and make it fit.
Right. It's just one of those things that thematically is not very. It's more Star Wars than Star Trek.
It does feel a little lazy when you have writers who are like, yeah, well, I really want to use stuff from like the 24th century shows, and it's like, well, you're not really supposed to use it, and they're just like, well, I don't care, I'm going to use it anyways, and it feels like kind of lazy.
I just assumed the synthesizers were 3D printers, but the one that bugged me was intra-ship beaming. That I felt like, because that was a plot point. Yeah, everything else was just production value, decoration.
What was the initial thing? Was it difficult? Was it impossible?
Scotty said, "Well, it's been done a few times before, but it's super dangerous."
But half the time they beam someone into a bulkhead.
And then Michael has the first security chief or something, I think, on Discovery, who gets mauled by Ripper. Yeah. I'm going to take its arm off. Ah! That goes the way we expected it to go. She just orders immediately her to be beamed to sickbay, and nobody's like, oh, wait, well, what? You want me to do what? No, they're like, sure, we got a button for that.
It does seem like I kind of wish that there was some a little more hardcore editor, I guess, who would just call out those things and say, just do, I think...
I feel the editor actually is pretty hardcore. There were lots of places where they got it right. This was just the one of the few where I thought the editor should have...
Fair enough.
They dropped the ball that one time.
Yeah.
Enough complaining, though. We're going to talk about what we thought was kind of our overall take on the entire season, as in what we thought like the story was, or what was the show about.
Right. That's the interesting thing is this is the first Star Trek season I can think of where I guess maybe except for Deep Space Nine,
season
with which I have the
season 3 of Enterprise. Season 3 of Enterprise is one season long story.
That's true.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I don't think of Star Trek as like, well, what was this season about? I just don't think of it as having that too often.
Well, it has it now.
It has it now. It was about Burnham's character arc, moving from someone who was struggling to find herself, struggling with anger. If you want to say that, like, the root cause of a lot of the problems has been, like, sort of wildly, like, grasping anger that she felt in that first episode, that she felt from losing her parents to Klingons, and the places that pushed her to, and the extremes that pushed her to realizing in the final episode that Federation ideals exist for a reason, that there are options, that that if one takes time to consider things and do the little bit more scientific method and ingenuity and push yourself, that you will find other options.
I didn't know she's realized. I think she's just rediscovering it. I think that's who she wanted to be all along.
Right.
But she never. She had issues. She hadn't dealt with them.
Right.
Her buttons were pushed.
Yeah.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah. It's interesting to have a character whose part of their background is mistakes were made. I feel like, Tom Paris was supposed to be a mistakes were made guy.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel it.
Yeah,
with
they're
Burnham,
kind of similar characters
like,
though. Like they're both like taken out of prison to go work on the ship.
It's true. It's true. The more I think about it, the more
I guess
true.
The similarities kind of end there. Though.
Right. Well, like in episode 2 of Voyager, Tom Paris basically becomes the smart-ass good pilot guy who occasionally they'll be like, hey, he's got a dangerous past, but it's kind of just saying like he likes to chase girls.
Yeah.
He's like not really like. Not like when Tilly was like, oh shit, it's the mutineer, fuck.
Yeah.
Like you kind of felt it a little bit more, and the way people talk about Burnham and then avoided her throughout the whole season, they got the weight of that season focus.
Super infamous person, kind of like if you had the this is gonna be too soon, but fuck it. Like the cop from the Parkland High School who
I knew you were gonna go there.
Oh man!
Because I had the same thought, and I was like, "I'm not saying that." But
the cop who didn't go in.
Yes.
Like you're going to be totally famous for this one incident where you did not look too good doing your duty.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe he's about to have a really great character arc.
Yeah,
maybe. In fiction, at least, that's what you hope for.
Well, reality has been stranger than fiction pretty frequently lately.
Yes.
Nobody.
And I will say that
outside of The Simpsons.
I didn't mind that they were a little heavy-handed about it. This is just a real quick retro thing I liked. I was fully happy with the show kind of commenting sometimes overtly on present state of things, on our world issues, but also let's just say the word on Trump and sort of that rising fascistic tide, and ends justifying means and things like that. So I enjoyed them commenting on that. Generally fairly subtly. Last few episodes a little less so. Lorca went full Trump.
Yeah. I'm going to elaborate on that when we get to me.
But yeah, that's I feel like Burnham defined it, even though there were other arcs going on, and a sort of a move towards I guess I'd say the sort of more responsible thinking of Federation and less impulsive behavior.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? How did you see the first season?
I mean, you talked. I agree with everything you said. I would say there's on a larger level. There's this discovering if we can hang on to the Federation values when it gets tough,
right?
Which is also kind of what the message Deep Space Nine often dealt with during its war.
So or Star Trek 6.
Or I guess Star Trek 6. Yes, Star Trek 6 was more of a times weren't exactly tough for the Federation. There was just a golden opportunity, and do we throw our ethics aside?
Do we turn our backs, or do we not?
Do we seize this opportunity, throw our ethics out the window, and seize our opportunity to solve this problem in an unethical way? But yes, when the chips are down, when the situations get really hard, do you do the hard thing, or do you do the easier, less ethical thing? And I liked that. I like that arc. I like that message. I think that, yes, Deep Space Nine did it, but that was back in the 90s, and I think maybe it's time we need that message again. So
yeah, absolutely.
And
it is a pretty eternal message, I'm going to guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my take on it was actually something that I'm going to steal from Dave from a few weeks ago when they had the Lorca reveal, and he commented on what it was like to see that the leader who we thought was going to be, well, he's the edgier, more bold type of guy who might be exactly what we need to win this war, and how he turned out to be a total asshole.
Yeah.
And how that was kind of very self-reflective of real world stuff going on now.
Right.
And that
there is an appeal to it. Anybody who's and when you have somebody like a charismatic actor like
Jason Isaacs.
Say his name. Jason Isaacs. You're like, I like this guy. Lorca was often one in my favorite character, or in my top 2 or 3, just kind of in my vague fan vote in my head. And it's like Rorschach in Watchmen is a very watchable, fascinating, completely interesting character. He's even gets lots of the most cool moments, but he's a homophobic fascist with a black and white worldview. He's like so many failings that like it scares me how often I see people say, "I love Rorschach." Like they're really into him. Yeah, I'm really into him, and I'm like, I get the appeal though, and then what I like is with Lorca is that they did not. There was a reveal.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm taking away from what you were saying the most was the self-reflective nature of that. And to me, I think the entire first season story was about self-reflection.
Right.
That's why they went to the mirror universe. Yeah. And they had all those hints at the mirror or reflection, and just the symmetry of the season where it begins with Giorgio and Burnham standing around a hole in the ground trying to save a planet, and then ends with the same 2 characters standing around a hole in the ground debating if they should end all life on that planet.
Which is awesome catch there.
Very
impressed with that.
Over my head, but
mine too. I pointed it out, but
the main point.
But I think that's one of those where that was definitely what was on the writer's mind.
Yeah, that was intentional, and that's what I wanted to mention earlier. Was that I think that was always the plan, was to do that with those 2 characters. Mm-hmm. But the arc that Burnham goes through was about self-reflection and learning that you don't get second chances. You can't go back and have do-overs. Giorgio is dead. Giorgio is never coming back. She's gone.
Right. But that was another interesting thing is the revelation that like she wanted Giorgio she wanted her to redeem her in a kind of almost like childlike sort of way, like a kid wants
she wanted mommy back.
She wanted mommy back. Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. And it's like, turns out mommy's still this mommy is an abusive bitch.
Yeah, because you killed the one that you had. You can't go back and do that over, so you have to learn from your mistakes. That's where the self-reflection comes in.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing with Lorca being revealed to be an authoritarian con man who wants to lead a xenophobic fascist society and has this creepy father-daughter relationship is extremely relevant.
I hadn't picked up on all of those parallels until you mentioned it, but that's eerie.
And
I caught the wall thing. Or like, did he say, no, I caught the make the Federation, or the Empire.
Make the Terran Empire glorious again.
Glorious again, yes. And I got a chuckle out of that. Even that is the full nail on the head thing.
That was as ham-fisted as they got with it, but I still like it.
But there's some great, those are some other interesting points in there.
Though I'd still rather ship out with Lorca than Trump.
But that was Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek was always intended to be a self-reflection and be a story of human beings today, but told through the human beings in the future doing stuff with aliens.
Right.
And so self-reflection is really as Star Trek as you can get, and that's why I can't get on board with these people who are saying like, well, this isn't real Star Trek, or it's not. It's good, but it's not Star Trek to me. It's like, no, it might be.
They have found a different way to tell those kinds of stories.
I mean, at worst, you could say it's a reboot, but it is most definitely Star Trek. I mean, if you really want to be anal, it doesn't look right, but it is Star Trek,
or it is
undeniably
not
Star
done
Trek.
in one episodes, or there's a little bit more moral ambiguity among the characters. Again, they had done that with DS9 and stuff too.
I don't think this show really went anywhere aside from nudity and blood that we hadn't already gone to in Deep Space Nine.
Right,
and I'm okay with that.
As a kid, I was
criticism.
I was rather shocked going from the relatively bloodless TOS to very notably remember seeing Wrath of Khan, being like horrified by the steady eels.
I used to fast forward through that part when I was a kid.
And
is it over? No, it's not over.
and then there's like the graphically violent injuries when Khan attacks. And
when he's turning on the Genesis device, when he's super
my
blurry.
god! He's a fucking zombie at that point. The meat's coming off. Yeah, I think that series, that and Spock, honestly, his thing made me more afraid of radiation than anything in real life. I was just like, oh my god.
What I think is interesting is I was like, when I saw that movie a little bit after it came out, I was the same age as you were when it came out in '82.
Yeah.
But by the time we got into the early '90s, all the kids had been so desensitized that I don't remember any of that bothering me.
You were just laughing at it.
Oh yeah, it felt very normal.
I was a kid who also grew up with sort of my brother had horror magazines like Fangoria and special effects magazines and stuff around the house, and so I was also fascinated with it. It was kind of a love-hate thing. I wasn't completely revolted by it. The level of violence, sort of the steady eels and stuff like that, was a little shocking to me. But I was also fascinated by Zombie Con and all that stuff. And I liked, the kid in me kind of liked the war with consequences nature of it, which was it Nicholas Meyer?
Yeah.
Also, do we know exactly how much, where he's exerted his influence on Discovery?
He was like a consultant.
Okay.
He didn't actually write a script for any episode, but he was in the writer's room the whole
I wonder if some of that, because certainly Ripper's work on the on their sister ship and some of the other violent scenes spoke to that same, sort of thing. But I think that's also the influence of Game of Thrones and just all of TV since then, is that violence is shown a little bit more in its harshness.
Keep in mind, Nicholas Myers also wrote all the 1986 scenes in Star Trek 4. So, it's not like he's obsessed with blood.
Right.
That was the least violent.
He loves his Klingon purple blood.
That's possibly the least violent story in all of Star Trek. And 13 movies.
Certainly of all the movies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
719 episodes, I think.
There are some TV episodes that are just as non-violent as Star Trek 4, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, as a movies, by a light year,
definitely by the
nothing
movies.
comes close to touching Star Trek 4.
Yeah, but anything else about like the overall story of Star Trek Discovery of season 1?
Definitely.
I was
just gonna say is that characters are kind of tempered in the forge of this war, and for the most part, the Federation people come out the better for it. Tilly gets on the command track. Saru finds his kind of his inner self that he finds his Federation too. It was very notable that he and Burnham are kind of working in concert in the final episode, very much on the same page for the first time, probably ever.
Yeah.
I think they were always kind of by random chance and arguments on the same page, but never legitimately on the same page until that final episode.
They're going to be a captain and an executive officer. I'm not sure which one's going to be in command, but that's what's going to happen eventually.
Well, I was going to say, I was surprised that Michael wasn't in the captain's chair by the end of the season. That's kind of what I predicted.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if they hadn't had a season 2 coming, that maybe that would have happened. Was that an earlier draft that they changed?
Just to, kind of like, that's the finale, sort of.
But I am glad that they're doing this thing where they can start people off with lower ranks and have them get promoted. So that we don't have Harry Kim, who remains an ensign for 7 seasons. Or who got it worse was...
Don't judge his lack of ambition in the future. He's not judged for that. Picard's not judged for his baldness. Harry Kim's not judged for his lack of ambition.
He was ambitious, though. They just never promoted him. They demoted Tom Paris down to ensign and then promoted him back to lieutenant before they promoted Harry.
Kirk got broken down from his...
That was a reward.
A whole bunch.
That was...
Yeah, that's true. He didn't want the Admiralty.
Yeah.
But what I think is even worse than Harry Kim was on Star Trek Enterprise in the last episode. These are the voyages. When they cut to a few years in the future, we see that Hoshi and Travis both remained ensigns for 10 years.
Well, Encounter at Farpoint starts out with Deanna Troi being a junior lieutenant. And by the end, 7 years later, she's a commander, and Data you have to call me sir. And Data's been a lieutenant commander that entire run.
Data was lieutenant commander for 15 years.
Yes.
Well, since he is a fake being, you can only expect.
No, that's racist.
Yeah.
That's all right. I need to go watch that episode again.
Yeah, Measure of a Man, season 2.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we have to talk about on season 1. So just real quick, in one sentence. What's something you want to see in season 2? Let's start with Dave.
Tellarites.
We already saw those in season 1.
No. So I'm going to expand on my one sentence because I get a follow up. What I'd like to see, I love that they gave us glimpses of all the TOS iconic races, Andorians, Tellarites, Gorn, sort of, and what's the other one? What am I missing?
Andorian,
Tellarite, Gorn, Vulcan. Is that
Orion.
Orions. The
Yes,
Orions was the other one.
yes.
And so they hit all those beats. I'd like to see. I think the Andorians had a lot of use on Enterprise. Did you say that I missed some Tellarite stuff on there?
There's like 3 Tellarite episodes. Or
I'd like to see them play around with them, and then
I think
surprise me.
there are 5 episodes of Enterprise where a Tellarite is on screen. If I'm wrong, let me know, comment or email. But I'm
So are we
pretty
talking about
confident
speaking
I'm right.
rules, or are we talking about basically they just like it's a merchant?
There's
Yeah,
at least
anywhere in the
2
background.
Tellarite themed focused episodes
Okay.
on Enterprise. At least
Okay.
2.
But yeah, I'd like to. I think that'd be a fun, lesser known one to try and like find what's cool about them, what's interesting. Build them up a little bit. But I would be happy to see that honestly with any of with Andorians or Orions or the other ones as well.
So Dave wants to see.
So I'm going to say classic aliens. is
Dave
my-
wants pigmen in season 2.
Yes, pigs in space.
Like on the Muppets.
Yes, like on the Muppets.
Brian, what about you?
I
Season 2.
really want a Burnham Spock episode. I don't need Spock in the whole season, but one Spock episode where he's the guest star, and that I really want to see that. I also am really hoping the new captain is named Garth of Izar.
I don't want to see Garth of Izar at all.
Sorry.
That's cool. in Star Trek Discovery because I don't want to hear people bitch about Axanar.
Oh man. Yeah, that's a can of worms.
They never stopped bitching about Axanar. They're still bitching about Axanar.
Yeah.
It's not going to change if they put him in it.
Yeah, they gave us this crap show that's nothing like Star Trek when they could have had Axanar.
I'll admit, the prelude to Axanar did look cool. It sucks that it was being made by a thief who wanted you to pay for his studio so he could make other movies. But
You're the one who said you didn't want bitching about from the Axanar fans, and now you're saying this.
Yeah.
Let's rile them up.
bring it up. But
Axanar was never going to happen.
so we have.
Paramount had nothing to do with it.
Oh my god.
But enough about that. We have Pigman. We have Garth of Izar
And Spock.
to piss off the Axanar people.
Yeah.
And Spock. And I think what I'd like to see is Pike having a big role, but not taking over the show. But I do want to see like a new version of Captain Pike.
You wanted the same way that like Sarek, though he hasn't been in every single episode, was a notable character, had a good actor playing the role, and kind of made his presence known.
Yeah, like I don't want like the Enterprise to show up at the last few seconds of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 only to like instantly like go away, or like, oh, that was actually like a hologram to lure us into a trap, or like something type of bait and switch thing for the premiere of Season 2. Like, no, I do want to have a story. Basically want them to do what they did with Supergirl Season 2, where Superman came in for just like 2 or 3 episodes.
Right.
And it was like a cool depiction of Superman. He didn't take over the show. It was still a show about Kara. And then at the end, he left, and he can come back and visit again, but he doesn't have to. I want them to do something like that with Pike. I'm really not sure if they're gonna put Spock in there.
Surely they will.
I don't know, because I mean, like,
Do we know at this point, and it's like, I mean, could they credibly say Spock is off? I mean, I guess you could always say he's off on some mission.
He's off on Vulcan, but that's where we're supposed to go. So the audience is still going to be expecting that Spock.
I think they've got to do. They've almost got to.
It's just I just get nervous with like casting the actor for a third time. I think Leonard Nimoy gave probably the most iconic performance in Star Trek. One of probably the top 10 of just any American television ever.
Yeah.
And I think Zachary Quinto did a very honorable job trying to follow up to Nimoy's performance. So you're basically gonna ask if they can, catch lightning in a bottle a third time. It's I don't.
They only need to catch it for 45 minutes.
Yeah, Spock also is so iconic. He more than anybody else runs the risk of taking over the show with his presence,
which is fine. He's the guest star for one episode,
right? And it's fascinating because he's such a subdued character, but he's got so much energy built up.
So, it does make me nervous. However, if they announce that they're doing it and they have this actor cast as Spock, I'll be excited. I'll be hopeful. I'll be looking forward to seeing it. I'll still be a little nervous, but hopefully they pull it off.
Right. They generally have. And even as I'm thinking about reflecting back on the season, I'm thinking of all these other things that we didn't quite get around to mentioning. Like, I love broadly the diversity of the cast, and that Trek finally made inroads and having a gay character, a gay romance on there. Yeah, they killed the guy off.
They killed the black
but
guy.
He's coming back in season 2.
Is he?
Yeah, someone in a Facebook group I'm in talked to the actor at some charity event they were at, and he was like, "Don't worry, I'll be back in season 2."
Is he telling tales out of school?
They're gonna do some mycelium network stuff. We're gonna find out what that green spore that landed on Tilly is.
I thought that there was that, or like Lorca Space Ghost will return or something. I don't think
they're gonna do Lorca Space Ghost. I think that if we ever see Lorca again, it's gonna be Prime Universe Lorca. He's gonna make it back from the Mirror Universe or something like that.
That'd be interesting. I had the feeling that they were going to do something with the Doctor as well, and so that's good. I know that they had they felt that there's pressure, kind of a something of a no-win thing where it's like, if you kill the character off, you definitely feel like, oh no, he represents all gay characters ever, and they have killed all gay characters ever. But if he's untouchable, then he's boring, then they lose dramatic prospects with it. It's a tough spot to be in, and they may have ended up finding a sort of best of both worlds by killing him off, but being like superheroes and sci-fi. There's ways to bring him back.
Yeah, but that also really cheapens it if you do that too much.
Right.
So hopefully they avoid that. But
you got to be careful.
But I think that's all we have to say about Season 1. Let us know if you want to hear us talk about Star Trek Season 2, or just anything else in general, because we don't have any more Discovery episodes to talk about. But
you could do a whole episode on Axanar.
That's not going to happen. But we will be talking about some Deep Space Nine stuff this year, that being the 25th anniversary. We're also going to talk about some Mirror Universe stuff, since me and Dave loved that aspect of Discovery. We're going to be talking about the DS9 episodes, the Enterprise episodes, the Mirror Universe comics that are still coming out. We're getting new ones later this year. We're going to be talking about the ones that came out last year, the ones coming out this year.
The trade paperback just hit last week of the what was it, Mirror Broken?
Yeah.
Of the
Star
Mirror
Trek
Broken storyline
TNG Mirror Broken.
That we talked up in a previous episode.
We have a review of that coming out.
Yep. Coming up, whatever. Yeah. I can't keep track of the timeline of our own timeline. But anyway, that is collected now.
So we definitely have a lot to talk about this year, even without any Discovery until 2019. But by all means, let us know what you want to hear us talk about. If you want us to talk about the Star Trek movies, and if you like having Brian around and want to get his thoughts on anything.
I feel like we should talk about the Kelvin movies. It's clear you and I have
we're going to get to that.
Some arguments that I want to hash it out.
But that's going to be it for this installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. So until next time, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.